Yo.
The two most important things in determining the quality of life for most people on this planet
Yo.
is money and law. Now we can argue about whether it should be spirituality and the rest of it and everything, but the vast majority of people on Earth don't know the first and most important thing about money, and they don't know the first and most important thing about law, and that is there is no money and there is no law.
Boom.
Boom, right there. And there isn't any money. There's only derivatives of money, which is a different thing from money itself. Mm-hmm. For example, you've got promises to pay money. You've got orders to pay money. You've got accounts denominated in money, but there is no money. And it's the same as, like, let's assume that instead of dollars, francs, euros, we have unicorn horns. I mean, we can run a perfectly acceptable money system with unicorn horns. I can write you a check ordering somebody, the bank to pay you unicorn horns. I can, promise to pay unicorn horns. I can be taxed in unicorn horns, and we can have an accounting system that is denominated in unicorn horns. But there are no unicorn horns. Okay, so that's now. What if the banker comes to you and says, "Well, we have to charge you extra because it's the price of unicorn feed has gone up"? You're going to say, "Wait a minute, how can you're obviously running a scam here, because everybody knows there are no unicorn horns and it's just a notional thing." But they don't get that about money, that there is no money. And for thousands of years, that was what determined the power arrangements and structure of our society, was that the lenders made themselves the iron hand to control borrowers because they had to put their money at risk in order to make a loan. Now, once we entered, say, maybe the 1600s late, when promissory notes started to come into existence and a commercial infrastructure that exchanged those promissory notes. And if you study forensically the actual physical securities and the procedures, the inescapable conclusion is that the business is in fact credit reinsurance and has nothing to do with money lending. See, so the bankers are still pretending to be bankers so that nobody figures out that what they're doing is it's not only illegal and criminal to the nth degree, it's also unconstitutional. And it's all because we've all been blinded. We cannot see unjust enrichment of a certain class of people. It's only wrongful for a poor man or woman to get something for nothing. It is God's will when a rich man or woman gets something for nothing.
Well said. Oh my God. A quick question here from Jen. She's asking, so it's not a loan, mortgage, or line of credit, it's credit reinsurance. Is that correct?
It is. And you are the lead underwriter and the lead creditor. You advance secured credit to the bank. The bank strips off the security, gives you back unsecured credit, but it's assignable and homogenized. Hey, people always say, well, where's the money come from? And they always say, well, the mortgage is the money, or this is the money, and that is the money. No, it's the two-party signature check. So all banks are doing is they are bookkeeping entities, but they are in fact credit reinsurers. They're not money lenders because there is no money, so they can't be money lenders. Once we entered, say, maybe the 1600s late, when promissory notes started to come into existence and a commercial infrastructure that exchanged those promissory notes and used them as evidence of debt, like a $1 million loan to you, I leave that transaction $3 million richer instead of $1 million poorer. Say, because now,
wow,
what do I have to do? Does that make a difference? Is that important? You'd think somebody would have mentioned it in 300 years. The dominance of creditors in our society, of lenders, became enshrined in everything we do, even the very way we think, because they were at risk of losing their money unless they put you in a cage, a legal cage to hold you and restrain your actions and make sure you didn't squander the money that they had loaned you and had to part with in order to loan it to you. So you've got to realize that so if you can get people chasing something that doesn't exist, you can run them around in circles for generation after generation, and that's what's been going on.
That's what we've got.
If you now next law, there is no law. What everybody believes is law is actually policy. Okay, there is no law but equity. All else is policy.
Yo.
There is no law. What everybody believes is law is actually policy. Okay, there is no law but equity. All else is policy. The way I explain that is that it says assume that it's called the de facto doctrine. It means in fact and for the time being. So assume that you're driving a car and you come to a stoplight, you're going along Henderson Highway or something, and you come up to a red light and you stop, and there's a huge no left turn sign in the above the red light signal, and a couple of others in the intersection. But before the light turns green, a police officer arrives on a motorcycle, gets off, and takes a position in the middle of the intersection, and he directs you to turn left. Well, okay, when the light turns green, what are you going to do? Are you going to drive forward in accordance with the sign, the legal sign, or are you going to follow the direction of the officer and turn left, even though the sign says you can't do that? See, right. The answer is you have to turn left. Mm-hmm. Because you are obeying the same authority in fact and for the time being. See? There you go. So now you say then, okay, what then is the law with respect to turning left at that intersection? Is it the law that you may not turn left, or is it the law that you must turn left? And the answer is that there is no law. There is only policy in fact and for the time being. When the officer's not there, the policy of the law is that you may not turn left at that intersection. When the officer is there telling you to do so, the policy of the law is you shall turn left and ignore the sign. Okay? Now, what happens if the real reason the police officer is doing that is because his brother-in-law has just opened up a new store at the cross street and it needs customers? See, that in a nutshell is how the whole world works. Everything that we believe to be law is actually policy of the administrators, and it is ever increasingly the private policy of those administrators for private profit and gain. And the whole concept of law is just a false pretense, or actually it's a true pretense, if you appreciate the difference. And a friend of mine back here in Canada, the government was forcing them to liquidate a trust so that, because of somebody who had died, and it would incur about $1 million of capital gains. Okay, so they were compelling him to do that to incur this. And he said, can you have a look at the capital gains legislation and let me know if you find any loopholes and all that? And I started looking into it, and it just blew me away. See, what happened was the federal government knew that it had no lawful authority to enact a federal capital gains tax. So what they did to get around it was they defined the act of making a profit on a purchase like that of a house as a punishable offense under the Income Tax Act. And what they are doing is they are applying a fine or penalty for an illegal act that you have to self-report yourself to the government as well. It's wrong on so many different levels. It's you can't get your head around it. But they're saying, look, and they're proud of it. They thought they were really clever. We don't have a lawful right to enact and put in place a federal capital gains tax. So we're going to get around that by defining it as offense and punishment business model or legislative model. And you're going to report to us how much money you made contrary to the law, and we're going to tell you how much the fine is according to the schedule. What I noticed after reading hundreds and hundreds of legal decisions was that the more objectively and flat out irrational a decision of a multi-judge court of appeal, the more likely it is to be unanimous. See, and that's what's going on out there. Is that it's because they're using irrationality as a means of broadcasting policy to the legal profession. Because if there were an actual legitimate case, discussion or problem with it, then anybody could figure it out and say, well, no, you're doing this wrong and this wrong. It has to be nuts so that everybody knows not to challenge it. See, everybody who's an administrator throughout this entire world system knows that they've been told you don't go there.
Mm-hmm. No, I never expected to study finances and law. I never in my life had a calling for that. I wasn't interested in that. But here we are in a place where it seems like if you don't get some kind of bearings in those two subjects, that you are somewhat doomed. And in fact, it seems like there's an obligation to start studying and see how you've been hoodwinked and how to get out of it. Can I ask you a quick question?
Okay.
Just
Absolutely.
because in Manitoba we're being slammed with tickets here. We've got such an intense lockdown, and the church is being ticketed for opening their doors, and people are being ticketed at the grocery store. There's armed guards at the grocery store. It's a couple got fined $1,300 for shopping together because it's supposed to be one person per household. It's over the top. I know. Can you roll your eyes enough? So is there anything that you can say about those tickets? Like,
you can pay them by simply agreeing that you owe them, and they can just charge them. It's willful self-injury. Say, this is way beyond, if I were teaching a seminar or a class, this would be an advanced course, but what eventually you're going to realize is that taxation does not raise any money for government.
Right on.
It purely destroys it. It's an act of vandalism. It's just nuts, because what's happening, I think, is that even though the government has the right to create money, they have made themselves, they have subverted or subjugated their own power to those of the private system, and now the bankers are dictating the government like it was some minion or something. It is so crooked. It's all fraud. It's all crime all the time.
Yo.